Hello, everyone. It's Savima from lovingawareness.org and Illuminate Your Circle. And I'm here sitting down with you now to receive another Illuminate Your Energy reset. Let's see where Source wants to guide us today. The first thing that's coming in is a question. And the question is, how are we being? Source never asks, how are we doing? Source always asks, how are we being? And I really love that question because it does orient us in a different way, doesn't it? How are we being? How are we being? For me, when I consider that question, how am I being? It brings me to a completely different place of presence within as I look and listen for the answer to how am I being. Beingness has so much more to offer us than doing-ness. And it's funny, isn't it? As a humanity, we find ourselves always looking for the doing, always engaging and immersing in the doing. And it's not one or the other, right? Right now, I am choosing to consciously be in being, in my beingness, as I do by creating this video for us all to listen to and watch. So they're not exclusive to one another. And I think it's important for us to draw our attention to what it is to be in beingness. It's what all of the great yogic teachings of the world encourage us toward. Beingness. Just being present. And honestly, I prefer what Source brings through for me, presence. Being in presence. There is a notable difference there, too, between present and presence. Present implies, especially in our culture today, present implies a moment in time. It's now, but it's not now, is it? As soon as I say that, that now is already in the past. And so to be present focused puts us in the focus of the time paradigm. And that's an interesting thing, because in the infinite nature of all that is, and in the presence nature of who and what we really are, time doesn't exist in the way that we've all subscribed to it in this earth plane, time-space reality of here and now. And we have to subscribe in that way, of course we do. How would we show up for all of the things that we need to show up for? And again, so it's not exclusive one to the other, present to presence. But how can they be united? How can they be merged? How can we immerse ourselves in the presence nature of who and what we are? And beingness is that. Beingness is that state of recognizing exactly where we are, regardless of what is happening around us, regardless of what time of day it is, regardless of how present focused we are. We are engaged and activated in the essence of who and what we are, and that is presence. So when Source says to us, how are you being? How are we being? How am I being? Immediately there's a vibrational trigger, if you will. This is the good kind. A vibrational trigger that brings us into presence, that engages us in presence from within. And we can use this. In fact, we're very strongly invited toward becoming more aware of this unique and amazing tool and gift that we have to consciously interact and engage and relate with presence within us. Because the more that we do that, the more that we discover what beingness really is. And when we discover what beingness is, when we discover what presence is, we discover all sorts of other gifts, one of which is timelessness, time outside of time. And this truly is a gift for us all to discover, especially those of us living in a culture of doing, in a culture of busyness. We've subscribed to this idea that busy is a good thing. And it's like it's forbidden. Like we tell ourselves, well, if we're not busy, then we're not being productive. We're not worthy enough of what? I'm not even sure, honestly. Status? What someone else thinks of us based on our level of busyness or based on our level of productivity? These are narratives that we really need to dismantle, that we really need to at least take a very, very deep look at and say to ourselves, what part of this really speaks to me? Is there something within this that speaks to me and serves me in a way that makes me feel like I'm coming alive, in a way that makes me feel like I'm really engaged in life, in a way that I want to be, in a way that touches my soul, speaks to my soul, touches my heart, speaks to my heart? This is really, really key and critical as we move forward in these times of immense and potent transformation. Source brings us to places like this almost every time we sit down and talk, and that is because there are a million different ways to convey these messages, but at the end of the day, there is this purity and this simplicity that is the foundational baseline that we really need to hear and need to know and need to embody and need to integrate in our beingness. As we hear these messages, there's a sense of remembrance. Tap in, close your eyes, not if you're driving, but close your eyes if you have a moment to do so right now, and just tap into the awareness, the consciousness of your entire being body, the consciousness of the trillions of cells that are orchestrating together to make up the human nature that is you in this time-space reality. And tap into that place and see if you can feel the buzzing of your consciousness. Can you feel the essence of your beingness? Can you feel presence within you, online, engaged and activated? Can you feel, as you sense that, the sense of centering, a sense of presence in the moment that you may not have necessarily accessed before? Call that in. Call yourself to that place of presence often and recognize that you're actually never separate from it. That's a hugely important key. We're never separate from presence within us. It's not even possible. Presence is infinite. Our presence is infinite, everlasting, evermore. Presence within us existed before this time-space reality, in this being body that we are now residing within, and the presence within us exists far beyond this time-space reality in this being body presence. The presence that we are in the infinite nature of all that is has existed before time as we know it and will exist far beyond time as we know it. We can't contextualize that. We can't really define that. We can't say exactly what that is, but in every cell of our being lives the consciousness that tells us this truth is real. We can feel this truth. And when we feel that truth, we begin to also feel the interconnected nature of everything else. We begin to feel the signal, our pulse, that connects us to the signals, the pulses of every other being, the ground, the earth, the trees, the water, the plants, the flowers, the birds, the four-legged ones, the water ones, every being on this planet. everything that is alive, and honestly, everything that came from something that was alive, which is pretty much everything when it comes right down to it, has presence, has the energy of presence. And there is an interconnected nature, one pulse, if you will, that connects all of us in the most brilliant and beautiful ways. And it's that interconnectedness, that presence nature that we become more and more engaged and aware within. When we tap into that, everything changes. We begin to see the world in a whole new way. We begin to see our path forward. We begin to see how is it that we are meant to be interacting and engaging in this new world that we're creating forward. These are the very simple things. They seem so simple that it almost seems like, how could it possibly be that this is the way forward? And all I can say is I know it to be real from my own lived experience in this lifetime, and through the connection to source, to nature, to the stories and the wisdom that are shared with me all around me. The wisdom that I know and feel deep in my heart to be true. I just know that this is real. And I know that what we are living here and now is, it's a small, small fraction of the bigger story. We make so much of this time space that we're in, and it's beautiful to engage ourselves in this life. Make sure as we're engaging that we're engaging in the pure joy of it. It can be challenging during these times. We can all get very caught up in, and I can do it too, I'm right here with you. We can get caught up in the devastating nature of some of the news that surrounds us. But the thing is, in the purity of our presence, we know that there is a higher truth. And we know that that higher truth is not attached to the linear nature of time. And we know that that higher truth will prevail. So our only job, honestly, is to remember who we are. To remember who we are at the core of everything that is within us. Yes, we are our personality self. We are the self that goes to work every day, the self that puts meals on the table for our families, the self that is in relationship with beloveds that surround us, the self that gets concerned about things that are going on in the world, the self that wants to make a difference so dramatically and drastically. We are that self, and we also are infinite nature, presence self. And those two things are not separate. They are merged and unified. And for us to come into relationship with that part that we tend to not even consider, we are so ingrained and engrossed and busy in our day-to-day lives. I'll even say the mundane, because mundane doesn't necessarily mean mundane in the way of boring. It just means mundane is that surface level where most of us are operating at. And we see that level as life. And there's so much more to life than that. What happens when we plug into the presence self within us and recognize that merged unification, that merged knowingness, that merged amplification and elevation of our experience when we are plugged in to present self. What a difference that makes in the surface world that surrounds us, and how much our surface world starts to open up to us and expand in bold and brilliant and beautiful ways. Doors open to us that maybe never would have before if we would have just continued to operate at that mundane level. And you see, I pull a face a little bit when I say the mundane, and that makes it seem like I'm saying, ew, mundane. Like, who wants that? We don't want anything to do with the mundane. That's not true. The mundane is this human experience, and we're here for it. My face changes when the idea of being engaged in the presence nature of who I am shores up with and meets that mundane. The face gets pulled because the mundane on its own is such a small, limited accessibility of what is really available to us in this experience. So we allow these messages to come, and we recognize right now the potency of being plugged into our presence nature and how amazing that is. And one of the best ways that I know how to do that is to just bring my consciousness to it. Conscious sinking is what Source has been calling it for us lately. Over the years, I've said it's about calling my spirit back. And that resonated for a long time. But what's happened for me is I recognize that my spirit never leaves. My spirit doesn't leave. Presence never leaves. It is always engaged. Motorcycle confirmation. I'm sure you can hear that. It doesn't leave us. Presence is always within us. The spirit of presence is always within us. What leaves sometimes is our willing, activated, engaged consciousness around it. So when I say call your spirit back, I call my spirit back. I bring my consciousness to the sinking of spirit presence within me, with me, here and now. That spirit presence essence is never gone, but the consciousness of my waking engagement has maybe forgotten, gone sideways for a moment, allowed myself to just, the consciousness level has shifted to a place where I'm not actively engaged, and I want to be actively engaged in every moment, and those moments are available to us 100% of the time, which means limitlessness, infinite. And so all we need to do is consciously engage. And conscious engagement, yes, it requires us to flip a switch in the mind, but conscious engagement really is activated through the heart and through the solar plexus, dropping our awareness down deep inside our being body temple, going to the center of our nature, and choosing to flip the switch of supreme consciousness, higher consciousness, presence. And as we do that, before we even formulate in the mental mind the question, is spirit presence with me totally and completely on all levels, here and now? Before the activated nature of those words mentally being shaped through the mind and coming through the voice, consciousness is already aware of the asking, and presence is already shored up because you have chosen to shift. I have chosen to shift. We have chosen to shift where our consciousness lives and resides, and how activated and engaged and present we are in it, in every moment, here and now and infinitely evermore. It's so powerful. I invite you to try that. See what a difference it makes. And don't just save this tool, this practice, this awareness for times when you're feeling especially down or separate, sideways, frustrated, agitated. Absolutely, yes, use it during those times. But bring yourself into that consciousness even when you are relaxing and you feel calm. Bring yourself to that awareness when you're feeling super ecstatic and joyful. Bring yourself to that awareness when you're walking in nature, when you're walking through the forest. Bring yourself to that awareness when you are immersed in water. Bring yourself to that awareness always, all the time. You cannot do it too much. This is not something you can do or practice too often. And the beautiful thing, this is something that I'm inviting you to do. This doing brings you into being. This is the doing that brings you into being. And that is the most beautiful reciprocal energy that you could ever choose to engage in. Because when we are in presence, when we are in the place of presence within us, when we are steeping in presence and we are actively, on purpose, consciously united, unified, engaged in that energy, Beingness and doingness merge and shore up, hook up, and create like never before. I look forward to hearing how this works for you. Do this, be this, tune in, ask yourself the question, become conscious of syncing, spirit presence within you with all of the layers of self that you are living and creating through, and see what a difference it makes. I promise it's going to be huge. And this very simple foundational invitation, this foundational step, this foundational tool, this is where we need to begin in order to know who we are, why we are here right now so very much on purpose, and how we are to navigate forward through the alignment of presence and heart and soul within us in the most brilliant and beautiful ways. Stay connected, dear ones. Be the presence nature that you are. Allow that presence to be infused in every moment, every breath, every thought, every word, every action. This is our practice. Thank you. I love you so much. If this message touched you, and if it mattered to you, if it made a difference, if you noticed yourself coming actively online in a way that you maybe haven't been lately, please save this. Give it a thumbs up. Share it with your friends. Leave a comment below so that I know how it touched you. I want to hear from you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'm Savi Ma from lovingawareness.org and Illuminate Your Circle. Thank you. I love you.